Now, the model, TV presenter and special police officer Penny Lancaster has opened up about dyslexia, IVF and her marriage to Sir Rod Stewart in her new autobiography, Someone Like Me.
He has sold over 250 million records. He has had more top 10 hits than nearly any other solo artist alive. Rod Stewart lived the kind of rock star life most people only dream about. But out of every headline-making relationship, there is one woman he says he never should have let go. And here's the shocking part. It wasn't the wife most fans think of. For years, Rod kept returning to the same painful memory, admitting that one decision changed the course of his personal life forever. So who was the woman who got away? Why did their relationship end? We have to go back through decades of love, loss, and the choices that quietly changed his life forever. The boy before the rock star. Before the leopard print, before the raspy voice on the radio, before the mansions and the model wives, Rod Stewart was just a working-class kid from North London. Rod Stewart was born on the 10th of January, 1945 in Highgate. He was the youngest of 5 children. His father was a newsagent. His mother kept the house. There was nothing especially glamorous about where he came from. At 17, Rod had a girlfriend named Susanna Boffey, an art student. Bohemian creativity is interesting. They were teenagers meeting at nightclubs, marching together at anti-nuclear rallies in matching deerstalker hats and high-heeled boots, and falling in love the way only teenagers who have no idea what is coming next can fall in love. And then Susanna got pregnant. Rod was 17. He was a nobody. He had no money, no recording deal, no name. He was absolutely broke. He wanted to put the baby up for adoption immediately. Susanna tried to raise the child alone for 6 months and eventually agreed. Their daughter, Sarah, went into the foster care system. She moved through different homes, different families, for 5 years before finally being adopted. Sarah did not find out who her biological father was until she was 18 years old. Rod met her a few times in the 1980s. Then their contact essentially collapsed for decades. When asked about his children in some early interviews, Rod would sometimes say about Sarah that one could count her if one wanted to include her. Even Rod himself later admitted it. It was only after Sarah's adoptive mother died that they truly began rebuilding. Rod said he felt guilty about the adoption. He said clearly that their relationship could never be what it should have been. He said she calls him Dad, and he calls her his daughter, but it is not the same. It is not quite the same, and she knows it, he admitted. He did not take her to school. He did not change her nappies. He did not do anything with her as a child. Susanna, for her part, never fully forgave him. She remained bitter for years. Sarah, interestingly, eventually chose not to be. She said dwelling on the past was not going to get her anywhere, and she moved forward. The breakup that Britt Ekland never forgot. By the time Rod Stewart became famous, he had fully committed to a persona. The blonde hair, the silk shirts, the velvet trousers, the swagger, and the women. In 1975, he began dating Britt Ekland, Swedish actress, Bond girl, the woman who played Mary Goodnight in The Man with the Golden Gun, opposite Roger Moore, one of the most photographed women in the world at that time. They were together for 2 years. During those 2 years, Britt was woven into Rod's music in ways most people do not realize. She was the French voice doing the whispered talking at the end of tonight's The Night, the song that hit #1 in America in 1976. Rod also wrote You Are in My Heart while he was with her. He was, by some accounts, at the peak of his creative powers. And then, in 1977, pictures surfaced of Rod leaving a nightclub with another blonde actress named Liz Treadwell. Britt found out through a phone call from her ex-boyfriend, the actor George Hamilton, who told her his wife had just left him for Rod's ex-girlfriend. That is how she found out her relationship was over. A phone call from someone else's ex. Britt did not go quietly. She filed a $12.5 million lawsuit against Rod in California, claiming she had sacrificed her own career for his. The case was settled out of court for a reported $500,000 in property. She also said something publicly that Rod never addressed properly. She said he never apologized. Not once. Not ever. She wished he had. She thought that would have brought it to an end. She thought it was only fair to do that. Decades later, Rod appeared on a British show called Loose Women and said that Britt was the only former love who still would not speak to him. And instead of reflecting on why that might be, he said she needed to get over it. She needed to get over it. A man who cheated on a woman publicly, never apologized, and then, decades later, said she needed to move on. Rod Stewart was entertaining, charismatic, and brilliant on stage, and he was genuinely unkind to the women who loved him. Britt Ekland was at the height of her own fame when they met. She had appeared in major films and brought glamour and international attention to their relationship. For 2 years, they lived a high-profile romance filled with parties, travels, and creative collaboration. Rod was riding a wave of success with hits that defined the era. Britt contributed directly to some of those recordings, adding her voice and presence in subtle but memorable ways. The connection seemed deep at the time, with shared moments in the studio and on the road. The wife who lost herself inside Rod Stewart's world. After Britt came a quieter but more significant chapter. Rod started dating a model named Kelly Emberg while he was still married to his first wife, Alana Hamilton. The Kelly situation lasted 7 years. They had a daughter together, Ruby, and then Rod moved on again, and Kelly was left alone with a child, saying quietly in an interview that it is very hard to be in love with someone and know they are wrong for you. But the marriage to Alana deserves its own moment. Alana Hamilton was the ex-wife of the actor George Hamilton, the same man who would later accidentally inform Britt Ekland that her relationship was over. Rod married Alana in 1979. His father's reaction when he told him was that he's far too young. His sister Mary, who later said almost the same words about Rachel Hunter, was already seeing the pattern before Rod could. They had 2 children together, Kimberly and Sean, and divorced in 1984 after 5 years. Interestingly, Alana took it the best of all of them. She and Rod remained friends. She once hosted Christmas dinner alongside Rachel Hunter and Kelly Emberg, all 3 of Rod's primary relationships, cooking together at his house. In 1990, Rod Stewart walked into a nightclub in Los Angeles called the Roxbury Club. He was 45 years old. He was recently divorced. He was, by his own admission, in the middle of planning to propose to Kelly Emberg when he looked across the room and saw someone who stopped everything. Her name was Rachel Hunter. She was 21 years old. She was a supermodel from Auckland, New Zealand, who had appeared in Vogue, Sports Illustrated, and Elle. She was financially independent. She was strikingly beautiful. And she was, Rod wrote in his autobiography, unlike any woman he had ever met. There was a connection straight away. She was extremely beautiful. But there was something no-nonsense about her as well. It was there in her New Zealand accent, but also in her face, which was open and smart. Not only was she as far removed as could be from the stereotype of the flaky model, but she already had money and fame. That was a relief. 3 weeks after meeting her, Rod proposed. 3 months after meeting her, they were married at Beverly Hills Presbyterian Church. His sister, Mary, watching them walk down the aisle, leaned over and told him Rachel was too young for him. Rod ignored her. In the 9 years that followed, Rod said he was entirely faithful. He said Rachel was everything he wanted. He said he became a devoted husband overnight. They had 2 children together, daughter Renee and son Liam. Whenever Rod toured, the whole family traveled with him. It looked from the outside like he had finally figured it out. But there was something Rod was not seeing. Rachel was 21 when she married a 45-year-old rock star who was one of the most famous people on earth. She walked into his world, his friends, his schedule, his children from previous relationships, his band. his tour bus, his press, his rules. In 1999, after 9 years of marriage, Rachel left, and what she said in her own words is more honest than almost anything Rod ever said about the marriage. In a 2001 interview, Rachel described what those years had actually felt like from the inside. She said she had spent 8 years with someone else's group of friends. She said that by the time she was 29, she had never done anything for herself. If someone had asked her what she liked or did not like, she would not have been able to answer. She did not even have a hobby. She said she had become, in her own words, just nothing. Rod's version was simpler. He said Rachel left because she was too young. He said it tore him to shreds. He admitted his sister had been right all along. And here is the thing that makes this the most important chapter in Rod Stewart's entire love life. He has said in multiple interviews that when Rachel left, he was absolutely devastated. The word he used was shreds. He said she was the one he really thought was the one. And he got that wrong. But he did not lose her because of infidelity this time. He did not lose her because of another woman, a lawsuit, or a public scandal. He lost her because he loved her too much for himself and not enough as a person. He pulled her into his world so completely that she disappeared inside it. And by the time she surfaced and found out who she was again, she was 29 years old, with 2 children and a marriage that was making her invisible. That is a different kind of failure than cheating. That one is quieter. And it is the one Rod has never quite resolved in the way he talks about it. He still frames it as her being too young. He still frames it as something that happened to him. He does not frame it as something he did to her. Rachel entered as a young, independent woman with her own career and identity. Over the years, she became absorbed into his lifestyle and responsibilities. The family travels, and a constant focus on his career left little room for her personal growth. By the end, she felt she had lost herself completely. Rod's devastation was real, yet his reflections often centered on his own pain rather than her experience of becoming invisible. The story highlights how even without cheating, a relationship can erode one person's sense of self. Rachel eventually rebuilt her life and identity after the marriage. For Rod, this loss marked a turning point where he confronted the consequences of his choices in a new way. It stands as the most significant emotional chapter because it shows the limits of his approach to love and partnership. The truth behind Rod Stewart's love life. No one talks about Rod Stewart has had 8 children with 5 different women. He has been publicly linked to dozens more. He has written songs about women, had women whisper on his records, named songs after women, and built an entire public persona on being a man who loves women. But the pattern underneath all of that. Susanna Boffey was too young, too poor, and walked away, letting her carry the consequences alone for decades. Britt Ekland never apologized, saying she needed to get over it. Kelly Emberg started dating her while still married to someone else, left her with a child, and moved on. Alana Hamilton, the marriage that ended most cleanly. Maybe because Alana was the one who had been around long enough to understand the game. Rachel Hunter loved her so loud and so publicly that she disappeared inside his life until she had no self left to speak of. The pattern is not that Rod Stewart is a bad person. The pattern is that Rod Stewart was never truly present for any of these women in the way they actually needed him to be. He was present as a rock star, present as a provider, present as a personality, but not present as a partner who saw what was happening to the person beside him. Rachel said she had no identity. Britt said she never got an apology. Sarah grew up without knowing her own father existed. Susanna carried bitterness for decades because she carried the weight alone. And Rod, through all of this, kept saying, "Look at what was done to me." She left. It tore me to shreds. I got that wrong. The deepest thing about Rod Stewart's love life is not that he let one woman go. It is that he never learned to truly see the ones he had. Rachel Hunter is the one he names. But the reason she left is not a mystery. She left because Rod Stewart, for all his brilliance as an entertainer, did not know how to share a life. He only knew how to headline one. 6 months after Rachel left, Rod met Penny Lancaster. She was a 27-year-old model who had been photographing his tour. She was tall, striking, and completely unbothered by his fame. She told interviews she was not a fan of Rod's music before she met him. She was not looking for a relationship. She was coming out of one that had been difficult. She described Rod's world as a vortex that sucked her in before she had time to think about it. But something was different this time. Rod was 53. He had 8 children. He had 2 failed marriages and a string of long-term relationships that had each ended in some form of damage to the other person. And Penny Lancaster, for whatever reason, became the relationship where he slowed down enough to actually be present. They have been married since 2007. That is Rod's longest marriage by a significant distance. Penny has said publicly that Rod's only regret in their relationship is that he did not agree to have children with her earlier because they could have had more. That is the man who once casually told interviewers they could count his firstborn daughter if they wanted. He said Penny mended his heart in more ways than one. He described their relationship as perfect. He said he tells the women in his life that they have so much living to do. But there is something genuinely moving about Rod Stewart at 80 years old, settled, grateful, and honest about the damage he caused, even if his honesty is still incomplete. He still does not fully own what happened with Rachel, but he is softer now, more reflective. And Penny has clearly been a stabilizing force in a life that was genuinely chaotic for a very long time. He performed at the Concert for Ukraine in 2022. He was diagnosed with prostate cancer. He has an 80,000-piece model train collection he works on in his garage. He cheers for the Celtic Football Club. He is in the quietest version of himself, just an old man who loves trains and football and finally learned how to stay. So, who is the one woman Rod Stewart should never have let go? Rachel Hunter. He named her himself. He said she tore him to shreds. He said she was the one he truly thought was going to be it. She is the one most people point to when they think about Rod's great romantic loss. Rod did not lose Rachel because she slipped through his fingers. He lost her because of the life he built before she arrived, and the life he kept building around her instead of with her. She could not stay because there was no room in his world for her to be herself. And a woman without a self cannot stay anywhere for long. The one woman Rod Stewart should never have let go is not the one he names. It is the version of Rachel Hunter who existed before she married him. The 21-year-old who walked into a Los Angeles nightclub with money, independence, ambition, and a future entirely her own. Rod was given to that woman, and he loved her so hard, so loudly, and so completely on his own terms that she disappeared. And by the time she came back to herself, she was walking out the door. That is the full story of Rod Stewart and the one woman he should never have let go. A life full of music, chaos, children, and choices he is still untangling in interviews to this day. If this video made you see his story differently, hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss a deep dive like this one. We will see you in the next one.